In this video, you'll learn how to identify parts of a navigator, manage workspaces using the carousel, access widgets from the Related Items pane, and use alerts and widgets to perform key business tasks. Your organization is using navigators to provide a focused and intuitive experience to easily access your employees' time, attendance, and scheduling information. Let's take a guided tour to learn more about the alerts, widgets, and wizards that you use to perform common tasks. We'll be using a fictitious manager named Christy Fryman, and her primary responsibilities include scheduling employees and managing the time they worked. Please note that navigators are highly flexible and can be configured to support a wide variety of work roles, and the layout that Christy has in her navigator and the specific tools that appear in it may very well be different from the ones you'll be using in your own job role. So don't worry if the tools she uses are unfamiliar. The ones shown here are really just for illustration purposes. Now, the most important element of your navigator is called a widget. You'll have a few of these, maybe even a lot of them, depending on your job role. Each widget provides you with the tools and information you need to perform a particular kind of task. For example, Christy is currently viewing the Genie widget, which presents information for groups of employees and makes it easy to apply edits to those groups all at the same time. But she also has access to several other widgets that she finds useful in certain circumstances. For example, she also has an exceptions widget, which makes it easy for her to see what time card exceptions her employees have and sort information so she can see how many of her employees have a particular kind of exception. Now, widgets are organized together into workspaces. You'll always have a home workspace, and you may have access to others. For Christy, managing her employees is her primary concern, so her home workspace, called Manage My Department, includes widgets that help her stay informed and take action on the employees she manages. Any other workspaces assigned to you will appear in what's called the carousel, located in the upper right corner of the navigator. To access a workspace, use the arrows to scroll through to see which workspaces you have, and then click the workspace that you want. Now we're looking at Christy's My Information workspace. This is set up with widgets that help her manage her own time. For example, you can see the My Time Card widget shows Christy's own hours and gives her tools for managing her own time. Her home workspace is still there on another tab, and Christy can quickly move between the two of them if she needs to, and she can keep both of them open at the same time. In the My Information workspace, one widget is active, the My Time Card widget, but it also contains several other widgets that can be made active when needed, such as My Calendar and My Earnings History. These extra widgets are listed in what's called the Related Items pane. Anytime you need to use any of these, you can access them here. Now, there are two ways to access a widget from the Related Items pane. Clicking a widget will open it in its own temporary workspace. If I click My Calendar, like I just did there, you can see that it opens and gets its own tab, taking up most of the screen. And I can do whatever I want there, and when I'm done, I can simply close it by clicking the tab's Close icon. Now, the other way to open a widget is to drag it out to the workspace. For example, I'm going to now drag the My Calendar widget out and release it over the My Time Card widget. And what just happened? Because I released it over My Time Card, it took the place of My Time Card in the navigator layout. My Time Card got pushed over to the side into a much smaller view. Now that's because workspaces are organized into views. It wasn't apparent when first looking at the workspace because there was only one active widget by default, but now that I've moved another widget out there, the workspace has reorganized itself to present both of them simultaneously. Every workspace will always consist of at least one view, and will often consist of several. A view is just a placeholder in a workspace that can contain a widget. There are primary views and secondary views. Primary views are larger areas, and a widget placed in a primary view is fully functional. My calendar currently occupies the primary view in this workspace, so all of its information and functions are present. My time card was pushed into a secondary view, which you can see is smaller, and the information it presents is much abbreviated. Also, you'll notice that there are no actions available for this widget while it's in a secondary view. So why have a widget in a secondary view? Well, usually you can keep a widget in a secondary view so you can reference some of its information while working on a widget in the primary view, or just to keep it on hand if you know you're going to want to work with it shortly. For example, let's move my time card back to the primary view by dragging it. Now, my time card and my calendar have swapped places. My time card is back in the primary view, and my calendar has now been pushed to the secondary view. And once again, I can take action and see everything in my time card. Let's try dragging another widget out to the workspace. I dragged my earnings history out to a secondary position, and since this workspace has space for up to 3 secondary widgets, the workspace once again adjusted its layout to accommodate the new widget. Now, realistically, would I want to see these 3 widgets all at once? Probably not. Now, I can move a widget back to the Related Items pane simply by opening its gear icon and clicking Close. My earnings history is now back in the Related Items pane, and the workspace has adjusted itself accordingly. Now, by the way, while we're looking at the Related Items pane, you'll notice that any widgets that are active out in the workspace appear grayed out, and anything in the Related Items pane that hasn't yet been moved out into the workspace appears in bold. Now, suppose I want to work in my time card, but due to the size of the monitor, it's a little bit cramped. So what I'd really like is to give it more space. And I can temporarily do that by clicking that widget's maximize icon. So the widget has expanded to fill as much of the screen as possible, making it easier for me to view everything and see all my options without having to scroll around. And when I'm done, I can click Restore Down, and it returns to its normal size, and the rest of the navigator reappears. Let's jump back over to Christy's home workspace. I'm going to try dragging a widget out into this workspace. As you can see, this workspace has been set up with a somewhat different layout. Instead of a single primary view and several secondary views, it actually has 2 primary views arranged one on top of the other. And widgets in both positions present their full information, although of course you may need to scroll to see everything, and they're fully functional. So why the different layout? Well, for this workspace, it's assumed that Christy will want to be able to work in 2 separate widgets at the same time, maybe working back and forth between the 2, or referencing information in one while working in the other. This workspace has actually no secondary views at all, so if I try to drag one out, it actually replaces the one I drag over, and the other one gets pushed back into the Related Items pane. Now let's look at a couple other ways you can manage your workspace. Your home workspace will always be visible, but if you've opened other workspaces like the My Information workspace we opened earlier, you can always close those by hovering over the tab and clicking the Close icon. The Related Items pane can also be closed by clicking its right arrow. And this is helpful if you need more space to work in the workspace. Now you can see that the widgets in the Related Items pane are still somewhat visible, and if you mouse over them you can see their names. And you can actually even drag them out in this situation or click them to open them in a temporary workspace. It may be easier to work with if you open the Related Items pane, and that is done by clicking its left arrow. You can also restore a workspace to its default layout by clicking its refresh icon in its tab. And in that case, all of the widgets return to their default positions. You may remember the Genie widget was in the primary view and everything else was in the Related Items tab, and that's what has happened when I click refresh. Everything went back to its original default position. Now I should note that while you can move widgets around as we've been doing and open new workspaces and so on, these changes only last for your working session. When you sign out and log back on later, everything will be back to its default layout. Now let's talk about a few additional features in Navigator that may or may not be present in your configuration depending on your job role. If your job role requires them, you may see one or more alerts at the top of your screen. Now, when something requires your attention or demands some action on your part, a number will appear over the relevant alert. The system periodically updates these numbers, but you can always click the Refresh Alerts icon if you just want to make sure that you have up-to-the-minute information. The numbers appearing in each alert have different meanings depending on the alert, but you can always get more detailed information about the alert by clicking its icon. In this example, we see that several employees have exceptions in their time cards. Each alert is configured to open a widget that helps you address the request or problem. And clicking on that alert opens the appropriate widget in its own temporary workspace. For example, I'm going to click Thomas Billings' alert here that he has 5 exceptions. Exceptions are viewed in the Exceptions widget, so clicking that alert opened the Exceptions widget and took me to where these exceptions have occurred. And you can see he has a time card with no punches, so this is going to require some adjustment for certain. If we were to fix these, which I'm not going to do in this demonstration, and then refreshed our alerts, we would notice that some of the alerts would disappear. Anything that we took care of will no longer appear as an alert. So these alerts do accurately reflect the current state of the data. While viewing alerts, you can also, if you'd like, click the View All button, and that opens a special alerts and notification widget, and that presents all of the alerts and informational notifications in a larger widget so you can see everything. Let's look at another helpful feature, the Search widget. If you have access to the Search widget, you'll have this magnifying glass icon in the upper right corner of the Navigator. Clicking that icon opens the Search widget where you can enter a variety of Workforce Central items to search on, such as employee names or badge numbers, configuration rules, exceptions, and more. So I'm going to start typing here in the search for, and as soon as I have typed the third letter, the search starts to return suggestions, things in the system that are related to those 3 letters. Now there's a person named Jane Fallon, and then there are people who have false values for several exceptions or other statuses such as on-premise. If any of these suggestions are the things that I'm looking for example, maybe I want to see who is not on-premise at the moment, I can select that suggestion and the details appear on the right. False for on-premises returns all of these. I can see that all these people are not on-premise right now. So search can be a really helpful way to quickly find certain employees or identify groups of employees who meet a set of conditions. And when you're done, you click the little X to clear the search and reset it. Now you also have the option to turn on hints before you start typing. This presents you with a list of possible things to search on, such as the unexcused absence exception. Selecting that, for example, presents me with the options. I can choose, in this case, true or false. I'll select true to see who has unexcused absence exceptions, and you can see that there are 6 people right now with unexcused absence exceptions. And when you're done with the search widget, you can close it just like you would any other temporary workspace. Now, depending on your Navigator configuration, you may be able to edit preferences for some widgets, controlling what you see and access in the widget. And if this option is available, for example, for this exceptions widget, you'll see that option when you open the widget's gear icon. If preferences is an available option, then that means you have the rights to edit the preferences for this widget for yourself. Let's try that. So right now we have all of the different columns that appear in this widget and the different data that goes into making up those columns. Right now, the punches column does not include missed punches. It is made up of all of these different exceptions. So if an employee has one of these exceptions, then a number appears for them in that column, but not if they have a missed punch. And let's suppose that Christy would really like to see missed punches included in this column. So she has that option by scrolling down and finding missed punch. There's one of the possible things that could make up this column. By selecting that and clicking the right arrow to move it over from this column, the available column, into the selected column, it is now included in the list of things that will make up that column. And from now on, every time Christy accesses her exceptions widget, the punches column will include these missed punch exceptions. Note that these arrows let you quickly move things back and forth. If the opposite is also true, let's say she doesn't want laid out to appear in that column, she can select laid out and move it back into the available column. And now it will no longer make up the data in that column. She can also use the double right and double left icons to move everything from available into selected or everything from selected back into available to quickly clear it out if she really wants to make major changes. Now, when you're done adjusting your preferences, if you want to keep those changes, make sure to click Save. If you're really happy with how it was before and you decide actually you don't want to make those changes, you can always click this little close to not keep the changes. But let's say she does want to keep that change, and she clicks Save. Now be aware that once you save, any changes you make in preferences are permanent. So to change those back, you'd have to go back in and change them again later. But keep in mind that the changes you make to your own preferences affect only you. Other managers still have their default widgets, and any changes they make to their preferences will only affect their own widgets, not yours. Finally, let's take a look at wizards. Christy has one wizard in her Navigator, Time Card Approval. A wizard is a Navigator tool that guides you through a series of steps to support a business task. Steps or pages in a wizard can be configured sequentially or non-sequentially. With non-sequential steps, you can move from one step to another however you'd like, taking care of things in whatever order you want. But in a sequential wizard, you'll want to go step by step from left to right through each one in order to ensure that the task is correctly performed. Now, the time card approval wizard in this example includes steps for approving time cards before payroll gets processed. So let's take a look at it. In this particular wizard, the first step is to select a time period and a hyperfind. And whatever we select here will affect all of the remaining steps. In this example, Christy wants to approve time cards from the previous pay period for all of her home employees, so we don't need to change anything, and we can simply continue on to the next step by clicking Next. And now you can see we are on to punch issues. Do you recognize this step? This is actually the exceptions widget. Only this time, because previous pay period was chosen for the pay period in this wizard, it's set to the previous pay period. And you can see that there are still issues that she may want to take care of, maybe even right from here before she continues. So this reminds you that before you approve time cards, you should take care of any punch issues that are still outstanding. In this example, we're just going to ignore this one punch issue and continue. But in a real situation, you probably would want to take care of that. So I'm just going to continue and click Next. Let's assume we're ready to go ahead and make approvals. If I select all rows, I can then apply an approval. And that is completed. And moving on to the next step, this is the group edit results for that approval where we can see what just happened. And it says that the approval was the last group edit performed on this date. The status is complete. All those approvals have been completed, and 44 out of 44 employees were successfully approved. Now, depending on the wizard configuration, the button for the final step may say clear or done. In either case, this resets the wizard and returns it to its default state, ready for you to perform the task again. If you're interrupted at any point while working in a wizard and you need to leave and take care of another task, you can safely do that. You can even log off. And the next time you return to the wizard, it will pick up where you left off. Did you notice there's a little question mark icon with each of these steps? If you click an icon, it opens a small pane with information or instructions to help guide you through the current step. If you don't need that anymore, you can always click the X to close it. Finally, when you're all done working in the Navigator, you should always be sure to sign out. Click the Sign Out link before closing your browser. Closing your browser without first signing out does leave your session open for a time, and that could be a security risk. So let's review what you've learned about working in the Navigator. Your Navigator is configured to support your job responsibilities and provide you with tools and views into key business data such as time, attendance, scheduling, self-service components, leave and absence management, and so on. Your Navigator displays at least one workspace, and you might have more than one. You open additional workspaces from the carousel. Alerts highlight areas needing your attention, and with one click, allow you to open an appropriate widget so you can manage the problem or request. The search widget helps you quickly find specific employees or employees who meet particular conditions. If you'd like to personalize the types of information that appear in a particular widget, you can do that by opening its preferences, making changes, and then saving. And finally, wizards help to guide you through steps to complete a business task. The steps can be sequential or non-sequential. As you perform a business task, additional help for each step is easily accessed with a click. And finally, always remember to sign out before closing the browser window. And that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.